This is CBC Vancouver News.
Calling on a ceasefire. We're calling on the end of the complicity of the Canadian government here.
We will never let you die.
We will never let you die.
Pressure mounts on Ottawa with another pro-Palestinian rally descending on downtown Vancouver. Calls for a ceasefire in Gaza growing louder. Plus,
they just are big enough for two people to have a bed in.
Volunteers in Prince George scramble to build tiny homes for the unhoused with more winter weather on the way. Also,
here we have like our yellow sugar, which has been by far like the hardest for me to get.
7 weeks and counting. The Rogers sugar strike is leading to a sugar shortage for bakeries ahead of their busiest time of year. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. We start in the Middle East, where Israel's military has turned its focus to southern Gaza. 3 major airstrikes on residential blocks are being reported. UN officials say at least 47 more people were killed. They're also reporting a strike in the north, where displaced people were sheltering. The CBC's Ellen Morrow is there with our top story tonight, and a warning, some images are graphic.
The images from Jabalia are very disturbing. This video purports to show a UN-run school turned shelter hit by a blast. We're not showing you the most graphic parts of the video, but it does show bodies, including those of children, strewn amidst debris and broken glass. Thousands of people had been sheltering at the school, says UNRWA, the UN agency that runs it. The head of the agency called the images horrifying and is repeating his calls for a humanitarian ceasefire. The Israeli military said it's reviewing an incident. Another video of the aftermath in Jabalia shows crowds digging through the rubble, trying to rescue people buried underneath. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says 2 Israeli airstrikes hit Jabalia. The Israeli military said its forces were operating in the area and had hit Hamas targets, saying militants were intentionally operating in civilian areas. Earlier in the day, hundreds of patients and people who had been sheltering at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City left on foot, those who were able to anyway. Israeli tanks were clearly visible as they moved south. The Hamas-run health ministry said Israel ordered people to evacuate, giving them just 1 hour's notice. Israel said there was no evacuation order, that it was responding to a request from the hospital to help people leave. Dozens of the most critically ill and premature babies remain at the hospital, unable to make the harrowing journey. Some doctors have stayed behind to treat them, but they say conditions there remain incredibly dire. There were deadly strikes, too, in Han Yunis in the south of Gaza. Dozens of people reportedly killed. Israel seems set to intensify its offensive in the south. Israel has told people in some areas of the south that they need to move for their safety. It said it's determined to expand its fight against Hamas. But many of those people have already been displaced by the fighting in the north, and it's unclear where they can go, with shelters and camps already overrun and aid agencies warning of a risk of starvation and the spread of disease. In Israel, families of the more than 230 people being held hostage by Hamas and their supporters arrived in Jerusalem, the end of a 5-day march to put pressure on the Israeli government to find a way to get the hostages released. The UN says a delivery of fuel arrived in Gaza today after the Israeli War Cabinet agreed to allow 2 truckloads of fuel into Gaza every day. But aid agencies say that's nowhere near enough as the humanitarian crisis worsens. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The estimated death toll in Gaza has now topped 12,000. That's according to authorities there. It means global calls for a ceasefire are growing louder. Today, another rally was held at the Vancouver Art Gallery. As Sorab Sandhu reports, there was a collective call for the Canadian government to do more.
We will never let you die.
We will never let you die.
More than 1,000 people crowded around the Vancouver Art Gallery, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. And this time, they were joined in support by multiple Jewish voices in the crowd.
So I'm here today in decolonial solidarity with the people of Palestine and against genocide of any people, anywhere.
This rally marks nearly 24 organized by local Palestinian groups since the Israel-Hamas war broke out 6 weeks ago.
We're calling on the end of the complicity of the Canadian government here with the Israeli settler state.
Rally organizers say it's time for mourning for the lives lost and that the growing chants for ceasefire are a sign that more Canadians are paying attention to the dire situation in Middle East.
We've seen amazing support and solidarity because everyone is very much able to see what's happening.
I want to protect all children and all babies, and I don't want to see any more people harmed.
The protest was followed by a march winding down through downtown Vancouver. Those here say they will continue the demonstration until a ceasefire is called in Gaza.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
With pressure mounting on Ottawa to take a more active role in pressing for peace.
I'm really hoping that Canada can be a leader in human rights as the world has looked to Canada as a leader in human rights in the past. I believe that our government leaders calling for a ceasefire, our MPs and Trudeau calling for a ceasefire will have an impact on the global scale.
A rally from pro-Israeli groups to demand the release of hostages is planned for Sunday downtown. Sohrab Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, parts of BC are bracing for another round of wintry weather. Environment Canada has put out a special weather statement for parts of the interior. Freezing rain is in the forecast overnight through tomorrow morning, and this alert covers the central Okanagan, including Kelowna and Vernon, as well as the West Kootenay. Anyone driving through the mountain passes especially is warned to watch out for slippery road conditions. And on Vancouver Island, a wind warning is in effect for tonight and tomorrow. Gusts of up to 90 kilometers an hour are expected around Victoria and the Juan de Fuca Strait. Meteorologists say the strong winds could bring down more tree branches and cause widespread power outages. A snowfall warning is also in effect for parts of northern BC tonight, and as the winter weather settles in, tiny homes have begun popping up at a homeless encampment in Prince George. Volunteer builders are making them, but not without some roadblocks. Our Kate Partridge is there with more.
Volunteers are working in snow and gusting winds to finish up shelters for residents of Prince George's Moccasin Flats encampment. Brad Gustafson is a volunteer and a contractor by trade. He's designed the shelters, tall enough to stand in and small enough to heat.
They're 8 feet wide by 8 feet deep, or 8 feet long, with a slight slope to it, and with a tin roof. And they just are big enough for 2 people to have a bed in.
Mayor Simon Yu campaigned on building emergency shelters for the unhoused. He told CBC News it's been harder than he thought.
The problem on the street, that for the scale of it, we have not facing that as a society together for a long time.
And then last week, the city of Prince George issued notices saying building and occupying these structures is illegal. Nikita Tiji has spent winters in a tent before. This year, she's in one of these tiny homes with her partner.
It's better. It's a lot better than a tent, for sure. People are gonna freeze out here, man. Like, they should be getting us lumber and stuff.
The city told CBC News there are no plans to enforce the orders, and volunteers say they aren't stopping. Gustafson says there is still a wait list of about 60 people hoping for shelter this winter. Kate Partridge, CBC News, Prince George.
Well, to the island and Victoria this weekend, BC's New Democrats have gathered to debate policy and strategy at the party's convention ahead of next fall's provincial election.
We need better health care and more of it, not less.
Well, Premier David Eby told the 700-plus delegates that he wakes up every morning thinking about more steps his government can take to tackle BC's housing crisis, and that he will leave no stone unturned to build more homes for people, but adding it's a job that will take time. Eby's wife, who introduced him before his speech, also made a surprise announcement that the couple is now expecting their 3rd child. The Rogers Communications labor dispute appears to be over, with a tentative deal struck last night.
It's been a long two and a half weeks for these guys, but the contract that will be in front of them to ratify, I think, is one that they'll have earned.
During the 2-week strike, Rogers Communications brought in temporary workers, commonly known as scab workers. But that process could soon be banned under federal legislation. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh introduced that bill, and he happened to be on the picket line today celebrating with workers.
So this is the first time ever, actually. It's historic that we have government legislation banning scab workers.
BC and Quebec already have anti-scab legislation, but this new bill would ban federally regulated workplaces from hiring temporary replacement workers. The union here, meanwhile, says it hopes the tentative agreement will be ratified Monday so that employees can be back to work by Wednesday. A strike, meanwhile, at the Rogers Sugar Refinery in Vancouver is taking some of the sweetness out of the upcoming holiday season. Job action at one of the country's few sugar processing facilities is now stretching into a 7th week. It has some small businesses struggling with supply shortages and higher costs ahead of their most critical time of the year. Our Janella Hamilton takes a closer look at the impact.
Pastry chef Tanya Muller owns Legato Bake Shop in Vancouver. She says she's already struggling to find the sugar she needs to fulfill orders ahead of the busy holiday season.
We started getting shorted drastically on our sugar, and we've been trying to just basically search over town, just going to Costco and things early in the morning, trying to find sugar wherever we can.
Muller estimates she needs at least 8 to 10 big bags of white and brown sugar each week. But due to the strike, her wholesaler is now only able to supply 2 bags, and they're more expensive.
We're seeing a 15% increase on those bags of sugar, which is at a time where food costs are already at like an all-time high.
She worries she may have to cut back production, and she's not the only one. The strike is dragging into the busiest time of the year when bakeries and sweet shops bring in a majority of their yearly revenue.
If they're not able to produce the volume that they expected to, it is going to impact them, and we may see a few small bakeries have to close.
I personally have a CBC loan that's coming due in January that I have to pay back, so I was hoping on, Christmas, relying on additional income.
Another hurdle small business owners are having to jump over after a big profit setback triggered by the pandemic.
Here we have like our yellow sugar, which has been by far like the hardest for me to get.
The strike's impact is being felt across Western Canada.
We were in Ottawa last week, and we let the ministers know what was going on, and we'll make sure that our bakers get the support that they need.
The union representing the 138 striking refinery workers says it is at odds with Rogers Sugar over issues like wages, benefits, and the company's proposal to ramp up operations to run 24/7.
It's that work-life balance and, having people work these long hours and spending more time at work than you are with your family.
Rogers Sugar says the Vancouver refinery has continued to operate at a reduced level, but acknowledges an impact on supply. Each day the labor dispute drags on is another day of uncertainty. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
It has been a difficult year financially for many families, but organizers of an event this weekend in the Lower Mainland hope to ease the burden ahead of the holiday season.
We've been working with a lot of different partners, as you can see behind us, to raise money and to collect toys in hopes to help out families and individuals that are in need this holiday season.
The Richmond Toy Drive has been helping families every holiday season for 91 years now. The event is put on by the organization called Richmond Cares, Richmond Gives, which supports families and accepts donations all year long. A community in the East Kootenay is getting into the holiday spirit this weekend. Kimberly lit up its downtown with Christmas lights. Even Santa stopped by to pay a visit. And as Corey Bullock explains, it marks the annual Shop Local campaign, which many there say is more crucial now more than ever.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas in Kimberly. Hundreds of people gathered on Friday to welcome the upcoming holiday season.
We have all the kids come out, the fire truck comes in, it brings Santa, and we do a big countdown and the lights all come on. And it's a pretty cool thing that we have a little bit of a special night here in Kimberly.
3, 2, 1, Santa!
It also marks the beginning of the city's Shop Local campaign and their countdown to Christmas, encouraging residents to spend their money in the community.
This season, they need to make hay while the sun shines. This is the biggest season of the year for the small businesses that we have in town, so it's really important that we support them.
Business owners like Patrick Humany say they've had to pivot this year with ever-increasing costs.
With the supply chains rebounding since the pandemic, it's been a little bit easier to not feel like we need to have stores completely overwhelmed with stock.
And he says the sense of community is what keeps him going.
The support is as strong as ever, honestly. Like surviving, fire seasons, personal struggles, a pandemic. This town's the best town to be in.
With the cost of living proving challenging for many, holiday spending could be down this year.
Just try to buy local and not really overdo it, I guess.
I think we're at a time when we need to be careful about the money that we're spending. I think people have budgets, whereas maybe in previous years, maybe not so much. But I think there's a sense of spirit. There's a sense of looking forward to Christmas time.
Free events like the Light Up bring the community together in a way they might not normally gather.
This is the biggest turnout we've ever had, like any of the years, so this is pretty amazing. It's just growing every year. It's wonderful.
Kimberly's Countdown to Christmas event runs until December 2nd. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Kimberly.
Well, still ahead, it was flippers versus tentacles off the coast of Vancouver Island. We'll show you a marine life scuffle you don't see every day or ever, really. That's coming up next. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the world of hockey, a Vancouver-born player is taking an indefinite leave of absence from the NHL. The Boston Bruins say Milan Lucic was involved in some kind of incident last night. No details, though, on what happened. Today, the team put out a statement only saying the organization is aware of the situation and that it, quote, takes matters very seriously. Police in Boston would not confirm or deny reports Lucic was arrested early this morning. The 35-year-old has been sidelined by an injury for nearly a month now. To the CFL, and the 110th edition of the Grey Cup goes down tomorrow in Hamilton, Ontario. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers will battle the Montreal Alouettes. The CBC's Jamie Strachan looks ahead to the biggest game of the year in Canadian football.
Two teams, two very different paths to the 110th edition of the Grey Cup, set to be held here at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton on Sunday evening. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, really the class of the league over the last few years. This is the team's fourth consecutive appearance in the Grey Cup, the first CFL team to do that in decades. One of the team's leaders, a Canadian, Brady Oliveira, won the league's most outstanding Canadian award at the CFL Awards held in the week leading up to this year's Grey Cup. And as a Canadian, he really knows the importance of the Grey Cup, really one of the most important trophies in Canadian sport.
You know, it's the oldest sports trophy in history, right? It's there's a lot of history to it, a lot of history to this great league, and I take a lot of pride, you know, having the opportunity to play in this great league. So just kind of letting the guys know, especially the new guys to this league, have how special it is and the importance of the history and the rich traditions that go along with the CFL, and that we have a special opportunity tomorrow.
The Montreal Alouettes, on the other hand, a team that has been fighting for respect all season. After a slow start, they rallied, found their consistency down the stretch, earning a place in this year's Grey Cup by beating the best team in the league in the Eastern Conference Final, the Toronto Argonauts, really demolishing the Argonauts in that game. This will be the Alouettes' first Grey Cup since 2010. Cody Fajardo, the team's quarterback, said this team really came together after the national media picked this team to be the worst in the CFL.
The first thing we had in common was the hatred for you guys of picking us ninth, to be honest with you, right? So that was the first thing that kind of bonded us, and we wanted to go out there and prove that we were a better team than what people were talking about.
The 110th edition of the Grey Cup, kickoff set for 6 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. The rock band Green Day will provide the halftime entertainment. The game is, of course, a sellout. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Hamilton.
You're looking at a live shot of BC Place in the foreground, Science World in the background. Well, some regions are bracing for a bout of bad weather starting overnight and into tomorrow. I'll walk you through all of the alerts with the 5-day forecast coming up next. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Join us for CBC British Columbia's annual Food Bank Day on December 1st. We're making the season kind with a special day of programming, all in support of local food banks across BC. This year, for the first time ever, you can watch our live stream of the day on CBC Gem and at cbc.ca/foodbankday. We'll see you on December 1st.
Welcome back. It was flippers against tentacles in an ocean matchup near Nanaimo. A would-be swimmer was able to capture this epic battle between a sea lion and an octopus. At first, the woman didn't even realize what she was recording. It wasn't until she got home and reviewed the tape that she could make out the foes. The duel went on for over 5 minutes, with the sea lion thrashing about, even throwing the octopus right across the water. According to one marine biologist, the sea lion was attempting to rip the octopus's legs off. Now, if the sea lion lets the octopus get too close, octopi are known to wrap their bodies around the sea lion's head and try to suffocate it. Time for a look at the forecast. It is a busy one weather-wise, so we'll get right to it, starting with a series of special weather statements from Environment Canada. In the interior in particular, this covers the central Okanagan, parts of the Kootenays, and even up north as well. There's a snowfall warning for northern BC, parts of it anyway, and in the Okanagan, we've got a chance of freezing rain. That's also in effect for the mountain passes, so any of those higher elevations, do be careful if you're driving. Starting tonight, overnight into tomorrow morning, we'll see that as well, so slippery conditions. Here's how it's looking with the precipitation. You can see the north coast is going to bear the brunt of it as the next system moves in over the next few days. Otherwise, for the southern half of BC, will remain mainly dry. Here and there, some chances of rain. And Vancouver Island, that's where the other wind warning is in effect. So similar to what we saw a few weekends ago, chance of widespread power outages with downed branches, up to 90 kilometers an hour, those gusty winds around the Victoria area through Juan de Fuca Strait as well. So temperature-wise, though, for Kelowna, average high is 2. So you can see we're still several degrees above average, at least for the daytime high when the sun does come out. For Metro Vancouver, here's the 5-day forecast. A few showers tomorrow, then we'll dry out. The showers return, a bit of back and forth, but otherwise right bang on average where we should be for this time of year. And that is your late news for this Saturday, November 18th. For news anytime, anywhere, download the free CBC News app. You can always find us online as well at cbc.ca/BC. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.